hell you mean I'm fired? I spent entire holiday season working overtime here. I slept under the bloody desk on Christmas Day. You're supposed to be paying me for overtime now. And we will be paying you in form of a very positive letter of recommendation. Look, sorry 2798-C. Executives made a decision. We need to cut costs, so we're dropping off a few of you. And come on, surely you have a pension from your old days, eh? Yeah, I had it, until you corp fucks moved in and invested it on my behalf. I'm not leaving this room until you give me my damn paycheck. I see. Very well then. Security, please remove this drone from the premises. He is no longer gainfully employed. Oh, that's rich. You think these corp rent-a-cops have the balls to do anything? Let's see them try. Motherfuck. I should have seen that third one coming. I think they broke one of my ribs. I need a fucking Wait. What the Hey, what the fuck are you doing? This is my apartment. Not anymore, it isn't. You know the rules, Drone. You miss your payment, you get evicted. You were supposed to pay up 2 hours ago. And you already got me evicted? Within 2 hours? Look, I missed the rent because I got fired literally minutes before paycheck. If you could wait a day, I could scrounge something. Don't give a shit, Drone. Rules are rules. You don't pay the corporate's land tax, you get booted into the streets. Simple as that. And at the very least I'm going to get my things. Take one more step, Drone, and you're gonna get shot. Your crap is being confiscated to cover for the missing rent. You want to recover something? Go put it in a form in the town hall. And die of old age before... Okay, fine. Fuck, lower your gun, I'm leaving. Jumpy dickhead. Great. There goes all my life. 6 decades down the drain. Fucking megacorps. Screw it, I need a drink. At least they can't take that away from me. Yet. Oi, bar person. Damn, you lot are blurry. Never mind. Oi, I'd like another bottle of the good stuff, please. You can't afford the good stuff, Drone. Hell, you can't even afford the bad stuff anymore. Just get yourself home before you drink yourself blind. Home? Joke's on you, bar creature. To go home, I first need to have it. And the corpse? Yes, they took it away from you, you mentioned. You mentioned it like 20 times to me and to everyone around you. You also shouted it multiple times for the entire bar to hear. Now please, just piss off somewhere else and stop scaring away our clients. Fine. Kicked from work? Fine. Kicked from my own apartment? Fine. So yeah, why not get kicked out of the bar as well? I would toss a ball at you, if I could see straight. But know that my foot will never again step into this establishment. You're discriminating against police veterans here. Police? What police? There is no police anymore, you old fool. Just sergeant forces. Now... damn it, I'm gonna regret it. At least go and wash yourself in the bathroom before you go. Eureka failure and disappointment. Failure, they said. Disappointment, they said. 30 years on the force, just like that, all gone when the corpse took over. Nothing makes sense anymore, nothing... Oh. Great! Not even crazy, rambling, homeless guys want to hang around with me. At least I still have another bottle of the good stuff. And yes, dear Mr. Bottle, I think your plan is an excellent one. Let's go!
Really? Is this how a so-called veteran of the Force acts? Gets drunk half to death and wallows in self-pity?
Shut up. For a single day, shut up.
Make me.
I'm about to. Just stop interrupting.
No. What you're about to do is not going to solve anything. You will keep going, and you will recover.
Oh, sure I want to recover in a world like this.
The world is not your responsibility. It is not, as you would say in the old days, in your jurisdiction.
True, but this district still is. despite what corporations say.
Then make it better.
Right. Right. Not today, Mr. Bottle. Maybe next time. Now, I need a shower. I just need to sit down for a while. Right. Enough being miserable. Time to do something. If only to earn some money for painkillers for this hangover. Fuck, I got old. Can't even booze like the old days. Never mind. Up with you, you old bastard. Time to do the one thing you're actually semi-decent at. Damn. I hope no one heard me back then. I was rambling so much, it's a miracle no one locked me up in the loony bin. Then again, hospitalization is for profitable citizens, not vagrants like me. So if I didn't want to be disposed of, I had to get some money together, and I knew only one way I could do it. So, as I stumbled into that elevator, I thought that it was time to visit my secret stash and get my old radio back. Except, before I could even go back to the ground floor, I heard that radio in my pocket. Guess drunk me was already determined to do the right thing before sober me was even conscious. I must have stumbled to my secret stash in the sewers in my drunken days and picked up my old police radio. Wasn't much use now, after corpos took over law enforcement, but I could at least still listen in to their reports and hopefully get some opportunities. And, as mentioned, one hit me before I even got back out on the streets. HQ, we had a murder on Franklin Boulevard, an annoyed voice said, clearly unhappy by this revelation. Copy that, Patrol. You see any stash ID around? Negative. Checked face against our list of valued clients. Not one of them. Acknowledged. Reassure the public, mark the spot and return to the hall. We'll send retrieval crew there when they're available. Station over. That poor bastard that just got offed. That was my chance. If the victim was not one of the valued clients, then it didn't matter to our starch cola overlords at all. Someone would deal with it, eventually, and by deal with it, I mean clean up the corpse and move on without wasting even a second to try to figure out what happened. But that is where someone like me could come in. The City Hall usually kept cases like these open for a few days, and technically speaking, anyone could contribute to it. If there was a murder, all citizens were encouraged to help with the investigation, if only because the corpo cops wouldn't actually do anything by themselves. Obviously, to most people, sticking their nose in a business like that was not exactly the most appealing idea, because even though there were official bounties to be earned, your average corp drone probably was too focused on keeping their own head as low as possible to not accidentally become yet another case. But for me, a former cop with not much to lose, yeah, that sounded exactly like something I could try and do. So, I went to the hall, grabbed murder case papers, and I think it tells a lot about our society that there are just murder case papers lying in the main office of the City Hall, for anyone to grab, and I made my way to the murder scene, hoping that it wouldn't rain. So, of course, it bloody rained. New year, same old shit. Ever since Starch got their claws into every single government office and repealed all industrial regulations, going outside was a quick one-way trip into getting cancer. What we all breathed wasn't really air, but coal dust and carbon dioxide, and what was falling from the sky was not rain, but some acidic slop that stuck to clothes and melted old pigeons away years ago. Really didn't like the idea of going outside in such a weather, but from what I heard, the murder happened outside, and it would only take few minutes for acid rain to wash all evidence away. So, despite suffering from hangover, and with my coat reeking of whiskey and vomit, I went outside to brave the streets of Corporate Habitation Zone F-073. Fortunately, the body was just a few blocks away, and I knew I was on the right trail when I saw one of the corp enforcers there, pointing the gun at the body as if she wanted to intimidate it to get back up. Took a step back for a while there, didn't want to get into her crosshairs by accident. As expected, she took one look at the corpse, took out her radio and said, "HQ, cadaver confirmed. Send someone to mark off the site until clearing crews arrive. I'm heading back to the station." And that's all the official attention this poor bastard would get. The enforcer lady shouted at a nearby homeless guy to step away and then walked off. Clearly, her plan for today didn't predict actually walking out of the office. At least it meant I could get to work, which meant getting my hands dirty. It's never pretty investigating a murder victim. We've evolved to be instinctually afraid of corpses, but if I didn't do anything, no one else would, so I crouched down to perform field autopsy. The dead guy was some chubby fellow, with a whole bunch of wounds all over his body. Cuts. Someone went to town on him with a large blade and then, to my surprise, even used the blood to draw some symbol around the body, right in the middle of the street. I remember some ritual murders back in the day, but I really didn't think I'd see something like that again. But being shocked didn't help, so I kept going. According to documents he had in his pocket, the dead man was named Theo Schneider. Sorry to meet you like this, Mr. Schneider, I thought. Hope you don't mind me rifling through your pockets. Found his wallet as well, with address written there, always useful to know. Took the key, not like he'd be going home anyway, and I was real tempted to take a few bills he had there as well, but no. Sure, he wouldn't need money just like he wouldn't need his keys, but there was a line there that I didn't want to cross. At least not until I was starving and freezing on the streets. Also, the fact that the money and documents were still there only reinforced my idea that it was some kind of ritualistic murder. Good. Well, not good for Theo, but hopefully it was a clue that would allow me to find his killer. There was also a work card, which claimed that late Mr. Schneider used to work in a place called Trucker's Rat Restaurant. And I shit you not, I turned around and there it was. Fucking hell, it really does say something about our society, doesn't it? The guy probably went for a smoke break or something and was gutted on the walkway literally 5 meters away from his workplace. Now, a younger me would assume that the victim must have been taken by surprise, because at this distance his co-workers would have heard his screams. It's hard to kill a man completely silently, after all. But I knew that people in this city kept their eyes and ears shut most of the time, and I'm almost sure even if there were witnesses, they wouldn't have done anything to stop the killer. But most importantly, there was also something else. Next to the body, near the wall, was a piece of crumpled paper, already dissolving slowly in the acid rain. On it were written 2 words, "Let's play," in a series of seemingly random letters. But it was the paper itself that was more important, or more precisely what was on it, fingerprints. I kept a print scanner from my days on the force, and I immediately used it to scan the crumpled note. If the murderer wrote it, then they would almost certainly leave their fingerprints on it. And, as expected, there they were. I then lifted dead guy's hand and checked his prints as well, and just as predicted, they were different. Oh yeah, it's all coming together, I thought. I had prints, I had a message, and, to be honest, the fact that the man was butchered right next to his workplace immediately made me think that the perp was one of his co-workers. Bastard was probably serving coffee and burgers right now a few meters away from me. I saw things like that happen way too often back in the day. You expect some sort of deranged or at least reasonable motive for slaughtering another man, but no, it's just a co-worker or a neighbor who had enough. Well, at least it would be an easy bounty, I thought, and entered the Rat Restaurant with my most innocent, just minding my own business look on my face. Ordered a coffee first, though, to keep up appearances. A man who walks into a cafe and starts snooping around, yeah, that's a red flag for any perp and a perfect way to spook them. But a homeless-looking fella showing up to buy something warm on a cold winter morning? Well, that's just another face in the crowd, to be served and forgotten within a minute. So, as soon as I got my warm drink, I got to work, and let me share with you some of the secrets of working as an investigator. Secret 1. People are lazy and stupid, and generally lack even basic imagination. Result of that, in that case, was a small note on a cork board in the corner of the room, and on that note there was a password to the office door behind the counter for all employees to see, and for any guests who cared to look at it. That leads us straight to the secret 2. If you act and look properly, you can walk pretty much anywhere, restricted areas or not. If you can get a clipboard with some serious-looking documents attached to it, or even better, an unmarked folder with some of those serious-looking documents sticking out of it, then no one will ever dare to ask why are you trying to enter a room where you shouldn't be. But, to be absolutely sure, you also have to look not just like you have the right to be in that restricted place, but that you were also ordered to be there by someone far, far more important than yourself. Roll up your sleeves, grab those documents and walk quickly and without hesitation, and unless you're trying to walk into some military zone where they shoot first and ask questions never, no one will dare to stop you. People's eyes will just automatically classify you as not their problem, and you will cease to exist in their minds. Just make sure you do it in one fluid motion, like I did when I walked up to the door with my notepad, punched in the code and walked into manager's office, all with one of the employees standing literally 2 steps away from me. I looked busy and I looked serious, so they didn't want to add themselves any more work, and so their eyes just didn't register me as I slipped into that dark room. Good thing it was dark too. Humans can be tricked, machines not so much, and as soon as I entered I noticed a small light signifying presence of a surveillance camera. Bloody corpo facial recognition system may take a while to kick in, but it can't be fooled. But fortunately, Starch only installed full version in their own facilities. Everyone else got cheap downgrades that barely worked without a decent light. Even as I approached manager's computer, which illuminated my face with a blue glow, the camera remained blind. You can always count on corps to save money wherever they can. So, the first thing I did when I logged in, and of course the password was the same one as the one on the doorway, was to turn off all the cameras in the cafe, just in case. Last thing I needed was to be added to some watch list. One by one, digital eyes went dark, and I relaxed. Open up employee database, ready to find me a murderer. Wouldn't be the first, and most certainly not the last. All it took was one bad day at the string of many other bad days, and the smallest thing could set someone off. A coworker sniffling one too many times, someone slurping on coffee too loud, or some customer dropping their fries between seats. Small thing like that, paired with someone at the end of their sanity, and someone else could end up a corpse as poor Mr. Schneider. So, you can only imagine how surprised I was when not a single dossier matched the evidence. Every company had fingerprints of their employees, as demanded by corporate law, so I fully expected that one of those prints would match the one on the murder note, except none did, even after I checked twice. Well, fuck me, I muttered. This may actually require some brain work after all. I still thought it could be easy. Maybe murderer's profile was under the computer, but it still could be found on regular piece of paper somewhere. Except that wasn't the case either. Despite all my instinct screaming that the deed was done by one of the coworkers, it turned out that this first case would actually force me to do some groundwork. Well, I didn't really expect I'd earn back all my savings by dealing with just one job, so perhaps it would be a good thing to shake some of the rust off. So, lead number 1, the most obvious, was out the window, so I had to actually start using my brain. Don't tell the company about it though, they have a separate tax just for that. So, if not one of the coworkers, then who? I wondered. Well, I'm still of the opinion that in almost every murder case, the victim is somehow connected to the killer, and if said killer wasn't at work, then they could very well be at home. You'd be surprised how often it happens. Don't even get me started on various marital spats that end in death. I'd be here all day. But since I knew where Mr. Schneider lived, all I had to do was visit his home, or in this case, his hotel room. This also only reinforced my theory that the killer wasn't doing it for money. If the dead guy slummed it out in the local hotel, he surely wasn't loaded. Knew a fair bit of people like him, too poor to afford actual rent, so they rented out dinky, damp hotel rooms week to week, jumping from one odd job to another. For me, on the other hand, it meant that it should be relatively easy to get in. Anyone can enter a hotel after all, and no one really pays attention to other people. In usual apartments, a new face is something to watch out for. In a hotel, it is just another guest. So, a small blessing, for me of course, not for poor Mr. Schneider. Before I went there, however, I decided to do some detecting on the site. There were some vagrants like me hanging around, both inside and outside of the bar. Didn't expect much from talking to them, they were all blazed out of their minds, but two of them mentioned something about seeing some angry fella with a mustache this morning. Could be nothing, but hell, it was a potential clue, so I jotted it down in my damp notebook. And as for the hotel, it was, well, just as I remembered from my last visit a few years ago. And this morning, now that I think about it, though to be fair, the hangover mostly killed those memories. The place used to be classy long ago, used to be pretty and well maintained. Now there was garbage everywhere on the floor, the carpets looked like someone vomited on them and the staff just barely bothered to even leave their room. In short, perfect for my work. Had a key from victim's wallet, so I just let myself in without anyone paying even the slightest bit of attention to me. It felt, well, I never really could say it back on the force, but I can say it now. It felt good to be somewhere where I had no right to be in. Not sure how you feel about it, but when I see locked doors, I don't consider them as a barrier, but as a challenge. Not even out of any malicious reasons, I'm not a thief or a pervert, but I just like the thrill, I guess. Right, well, I should move on before you think I'm fucked in the head. So, back to Mr. Schneider's case. It was one of the cheaper rooms. Poor bastard didn't even have a shower installed. But it was also clear that inhabitants did their best to keep the place as clean as they could. And yes, inhabitants, plural. Quick look around indicated that there were two people living there, probably victim's partner. My first thought was that they were responsible, but I checked their documents, grabbed a few prints and realized that no. Lara Lindberg, officially registered as Mr. Schneider's wife, was not, in fact, responsible. She was, at this time, apparently at work, and at the time probably wasn't even aware that she was now a widow. I briefly thought about leaving her some reassuring note, but then realized that the last thing she'd want to know after learning of her husband's death was the fact that some other homeless bastard broke into her apartment and rummaged in their drawers. She'd be fine. She'd have to be. As for me, well, two easiest options were out of the window. Our guy wasn't killed by a coworker or by his jilted wife, and it didn't seem like she hired someone to do it for her either. So, I had to do more detecting. And this is something people generally don't know about our job. I saw some old-school crime dramas on Spectrovision, and they always have this scene where the lead investigator suddenly has a brilliant idea and the case resolves itself in a flash. What these movies don't show is how it looks for real. The long, arduous, and oftentimes obscenely boring process of peeling away one clue after another until finally only the truth is left. And since my life was not a movie, I had to get to work. I still assumed that the killer must have known the victim, so that narrowed initial search slightly. First, the neighbors. I had my print scanner, so all I had to do was to walk to nearby doors and check if that print that was left on Murder's note wasn't on handle somewhere. And the scanner certainly picked up a whole load of fingerprints, as well as other questionable things, because this was a hotel after all, but nothing seemed to match. So, dead end, on to another clue. Mr. Schneider and his wife had a notebook with phone numbers and addresses of their associates. Maybe friends, maybe co-workers, maybe someone else. Didn't matter. What mattered was that there was a good chance that one of the many, many names in that book could be the killer. But which one, though? Well, there was no easy way to know. And that is where that unshowed, boring part of being detective comes into play. Sure, it may seem as mind-numbingly boring a groundwork. Sure, it may not be as thrilling as having a eureka moment where all clues magically fall into place, but that is not how real life goes. Nothing gets handed to you for free, so I zipped up my coat and marched out into the streets, again, to check every single address from that damn green book. A fancy apartment in one of the higher towers? Nothing. A dirty backyard room for rent in the slums? Nothing. You wouldn't make a movie out of this, but there I was, wandering through grimy buildings, hour after hour, dodging annoyed tenants and angry janitors, meticulously scanning every door and handle. And then I reached a place called Andre Terrace, an old-school 5-story brick building. One of the names from the list was there on the 4th floor. And as I clambered up the stairs, I saw a man opening the doors to the apartment that I wanted to check. Not a thief, he had keys, but the moment I saw him, the hair on my neck stood straight up and a jolt of electricity ran down my spine. I can't explain it. It was like this feeling you get when you're looking, say, for lost keys, and you see them lying somewhere. My brain screamed at me. The mustache, he had a mustache, like those hobos in the back alleys said. Sure, he had one, the more rational part of my brain replied, but we can't just assume that any person with a stash is the killer. We have to check. And so check I did. As soon as the guy closed the doors behind him, I crept closer and let my scanner do the job. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. You can take all drugs in the world. You can booze like there's no tomorrow. But nothing can compare to the high of bumping into your resolution almost by accident. The prints were fresh, and the scanner immediately recognized them. They were the same as the ones on the murder note. The book said that whoever lived here went by the name of Anguo. Well then, Mr. Anguo, guess it's time for you to learn about consequences of your actions. And on the very same day you committed them, no less. I wonder if he felt the similar way, if his own brain realized that he almost rubbed shoulders with the man who'd toss him in jail. Hopefully not. Last thing I needed was a guy willing to kill someone knowing I'm coming for him. Now, back then I was so buzzed on endorphins that I wanted to barge in right away, but I fortunately managed to hold myself back. Sure, I could enter, but then what? I had nothing to restrain this Anguo guy, and he already proved today that gutting someone was not beyond his capabilities. So I sprinted back to the town hall, almost getting a heart attack, grabbed an overpriced pair of handcuffs from a supply locker, because corporations will sell you everything, even police tools. And then, well, then I sprinted back. And after catching my breath, I went back to Mr. Anguo's door, and politely knocked on it. And again, and then again. Took a good minute or two of banging on the door before the groggy voice finally said, "A moment." I could hear bed springs creaking through the door. What, you got tired by carving up your mate and you needed to take a nap, you bastard? Well, at least that's what I said in my head, because as the doors opened, I was ready with my most polite and slightly awkward smile and a deferential pose that said, "Oh, I'm sorry for bothering, but my job forces me to be here." And good thing I did, because the man who opened the door was looking rough. He was thin, but had tattooed, muscular arms that must have been like half of his body weight, and though his voice sounded like he just woke up, his eyes were focused. He stared at me for a split second, recognized me as someone non-threatening, and then immediately looked up and down the corridor to see if there wasn't any more trouble using me as bait. But there was nothing, so he visibly relaxed and said, "What you want?" Sorry sir, but I'm performing a corporate workplace survey on behalf of Starch Cola and subsidiaries in our hub zone. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" "I do mind, but go right ahead," the man replied, rolling his eyes. Good, I thought. Keep thinking of me as a little, snivelling office drone. "So, first I'd like to ask your name, sir." "It's Mr. None of Your Business, Soot," he said, and scoffed when I dutifully wrote it all down in my notepad. That is how a cop drone would do it. Never question anything, just do the baseline minimum and pray for the salary to come in. Right then, Mr. Business. Next, do you happen to dine in Rat Tracker's restaurant?" I continued, avoiding eye contact and shifting nervously from leg to leg. "Yes, once. Served literal shit wrapped in plastic, so I never went back there again. What, you doing this on their behalf? Let me tell you, old man, go find another employer, one that doesn't serve dead rats and call them hot dogs." Ah, anecdotes, good. It meant he was now relaxed. I really should have stopped back then. Hell, there was no point to even perform this charade in the first place, but I wanted to see if he would crack, so I kept going. Right, we'll file that as occasionally, and I'm sorry, this is really a weird one, but I'm afraid it's marketing department that makes these questions, so I can't do much about it. But do you happen to know someone by the name of Theo? I think they're gauging the name for a mascot or something. I used to know one long ago. Was my co-worker in a power plant back on the continent. But not in recent years though, no. Damn, he was good. He sounded like he tried to be helpful, but also like someone annoyed after being woken up by a cope drone with a list of moronic questions. So, perfectly normal reaction. If only you resisted the urge to leave a damn note on the site, Mr. Onguo, then I'd never be able to tell that you were the perp. Right. Well then, in that case I'll just file it as yes, sir. Now, that will be all. Sorry for the trouble, Mr. Schneider, I blurted out, and immediately closed the door right in front of him. One second. He was confused by the conversation ending so suddenly. 2 seconds. His brain probably noticed that I called him by the name of the man he murdered this morning. 3 seconds. Whatever further thoughts he had were shut down as I rammed my entire body weight into his door, slamming into him like a speeding truck. For a split second I saw confusion, anger and realization in his wide eyes, and then a few centimeters of wood smashed into the man's head and sent him tumbling to the floor. I barged in with the door, slammed them shut behind me and jumped on top of the guy before he could even catch his breath. He tried to lift his head back up from the floor, but I just punched him in the face, rolled him on his stomach and locked handcuffs on his wrists. "You have been policed," I wheezed out, lifting myself back to my feet. He mumbled something nondescript. Clearly, his head was spinning right now. He felt my entrance, and I was feeling quite proud of that. As for me, I got back on my feet to catch my breath, and to take a look around the apartment. It was depressingly similar to the room where poor Mr. Schneider used to live. Almost made me feel sad. 2 miserable cope drones going at each other instead of sticking it to the man that kept them down. But then I turned on the lights and noticed a bloody damned motherfucking sword on his kitchen counter, still dripping with blood as if some grisly macabre trophy. Onguo clearly really didn't expect anyone would catch up to him, certainly not so soon. I was checking the blade for fingerprints, just to be sure, when I heard him. "You think you're going to change anything, copper?" Onguo asked, slowly raising from the floor. He was still woozy, and I doubted he'd break out of his handcuffs, but I kept an eye on him, just to be sure. He was certainly tough if he woke up so quickly after I slammed him with the door. "My friends can afford the bailout. You may arrest me today, but I'm going to walk free by the end of the month." He was probably right. The company only cared about money, and since he didn't kill any one of their important employees, they'd accept a bailout without batting an eye. But he'd still end up in a corporate slammer for a while, and I knew how they worked. I wouldn't wish even a single day there on my worst enemy. Sure, Onguo could walk free, but what would be released would be a wreck, barely resembling a human. "Besides, what does any of it matter?" he continued, a new fire in his voice. "The man I killed was worthless, penniless, unprofitable. By spilling his blood I did the company a favor. His corpse thrown into composting vat will have more worth than his pointless life." Ah, I heard about these people. Ones who don't actually hate Starch Corporation for taking over their lives, but instead worship it like some kind of deranged god, hoping that by embracing the corporate mindset to the extreme would somehow get them recognized and noticed. It never did. "That is all that matters, cop," Onguo kept rambling. The handcuffs held, but I wished I had a gag for him. "Money, that is all what Starch turned us into, and that is what we are. If we are not valuable enough, we are nothing but a waste of space." And again, he was right. In this new post-war world, only your net worth mattered. I could have been gutted on the street like Schneider was and no one would care. I wouldn't even get a gravestone, just a note in some file somewhere as my body was tossed into chemical vats to turn me into fertilizer. So yes, Nguo had a point in some twisted way, and I hated him even more for it. So I didn't reply to any of his rants. Instead, I simply collected all of the evidence, then punched him as hard as I could in the back of the head and walked out. Pondering morality or awful situation of a world was not my job there, nor was delivering the perp to the city hall. That had to be done officially by Starch enforcers, so that they could at least pretend they worked. So I left Nguo there, his broken nose bleeding on the floor, and marched right to the main desk of the hall. It was funny to think about it. Corpo cops wouldn't lift a finger to find the murderer, but if someone delivered them one on a silver platter, they were contractually obligated to verify my arrest within an hour. So, when I gave all filled forms to a grey-faced clerk, so grey-faced you could barely even register he was there, I could see disdain in his eyes. Here he and his friends were, having another easy day, and some asshat came along with murder investigation papers and forced them to leave their cozy offices. That's, well, not my problem. I gave him the documents, explained where the perp was waiting for a pickup, and took a nap on the dreadfully uncomfortable benches in the reception. And, as expected, exactly 1 hour later, the same grey-faced man came up to me, but this time with a slightest hint of respect in his dead eyes. "Your investigation appears to be in order, mister," he said, handing me an envelope. "Your reward. Also, I tried to input your service into our systems and realized you have been classified as a vagrant since yesterday." "Yeah, well, shit happened," I replied. The memory of my life collapsing within a few hours was still a bit too fresh. "Well, none of my business, mister," office man replied coldly. "But you would be happy to know that thanks to your service, your social credit rank has also improved. You are still classified as a vagrant, mind you, but a vagrant who can be of some profit to our beloved company." "May they prosper forevermore," I replied automatically, hating myself for it. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that now I was one step closer to... Oh, damn. It occurs to me that I didn't actually tell you why I was running around playing detective. Well, short version, I needed money very quickly. Long version? How about I tell you next time?